Hey Jax, Miss Hayes here. Today we're going to talk about the building blocks of the English language, which you will use to improve your vocabulary throughout the year. As always, I expect you to take Cornell notes while you watch the video, so please take a moment to pause the video while you create your own Cornell note paper on a blank sheet of loose leaf paper. Today, your essential question is, how can I use my knowledge of the building blocks of English to improve my vocabulary? Please copy this down in the essential question section of your notes. Before I jump into the nitty-gritty details of English, I want you to watch this brief clip comparing the different languages found in Europe.
Avion,
Aeroplane.
Aero.
Avion.
Flugzeug.
Surprise,
Surprise.
Sorpresa.
Sorpresa.
Überraschung.
Stylo,
Pen.
Penna.
Plume.
Kugelschreiber.
Ambulance,
Ambulance.
Ambulanza.
Ambulancia.
Krankenwagen.
Science,
Science.
Scienza.
Ciencia.
Naturwissenschaften.
Now, in your notes, take a moment to jot down some of your observations comparing and contrasting the different languages from the clip. We will refer back to your notes and your observations in just a few minutes. All right, we're going to watch another video clip, this time on the history of the English language. So I want you to think about how it might explain the differences and similarities between these European languages.
I'm going to start with a challenge. I want you to imagine each of these two scenes in as much detail as you can. Scene number 1. They gave us a hearty welcome. Well, who are the people who are giving a hearty welcome? What are they wearing? What are they drinking? Okay, scene 2. They gave us a cordial reception. How are these people standing? What expressions are on their faces? What are they wearing and drinking? Fix these pictures in your mind's eye, and then jot down a sentence or two to describe them. We'll come back to them later. Now, on to our story. In the year 400 CE, the Celts in Britain were ruled by Romans. This had one benefit for the Celts. The Romans protected them from the barbarian Saxon tribes of northern Europe. But then the Roman Empire began to crumble, and the Romans withdrew from Britain. With the Romans gone, the Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and Frisians quickly sailed across the water, did away with the Celts, and formed kingdoms in the British Isles. For several centuries, these tribes lived in Britain, and their Germanic language, Anglo-Saxon, became the common language, what we call Old English. Although modern English speakers may think Old English sounds like a different language, if you look and listen closely, you'll find many words that are recognizable. For example, here's what the Lord's Prayer looks like in Old English. At first glance, it may look unfamiliar, but update the spelling a bit and you'll see many common English words. So the centuries passed, with Britons happily speaking Old English. But in the 700s, a series of Viking invasions began, which continued until a treaty split the island in half. On one side were the Saxons. On the other side were the Danes, who spoke a language called Old Norse. As Saxons fell in love with their cute Danish neighbors and marriages blurred the boundaries, Old Norse mixed with Old English, and many Old Norse words, like freckle, leg, root, skin, and want, are still a part of our language. 300 years later, in 1066, the Norman conquest brought war again to the British Isles. The Normans were Vikings who had settled in France. They had abandoned the Viking language and culture in favor of a French lifestyle, but they still fought like Vikings. They placed a Norman king on the English throne, and for 3 centuries, French was the language of the British royalty. Society in Britain came to have two levels: French-speaking aristocracy and Old English-speaking peasants. The French also brought many Roman Catholic clergymen with them, who added Latin words to the mix. Old English adapted and grew as thousands of words flowed in, many having to do with government, law, and aristocracy. Words like council, marriage, sovereign, govern, damage, and parliament. As the language expanded, English speakers quickly realized what to do if they wanted to sound sophisticated. They would use words that had come from French or Latin. Anglo-Saxon words seemed so plain, like the Anglo-Saxon peasants who spoke them. Let's go back to the two sentences you thought about earlier. When you pictured the hearty welcome, did you see an earthy scene with relatives hugging and talking loudly? Were they drinking beer? Were they wearing lumberjack shirts and jeans? And what about the cordial reception? I bet you pictured a far more classy and refined crowd, blazers and skirts, wine and caviar. Why is this? How is it that phrases that are considered just about synonymous by the dictionary can evoke such different pictures and feelings? Hearty and welcome are both Saxon words. Cordial and reception come from French. The connotation of nobility and authority has persisted around words of French origin, and the connotation of peasantry, real people, salt of the earth, has persisted around Saxon words. Even if you never heard this history before, the memory of it persists in the feelings evoked by the words you speak. On some level, it's a story you already knew, because whether we realize it consciously or only subconsciously, our history lives in the words we speak and hear.
So basically, a bunch of people from a bunch of different places a long time ago all got together in one place, and their languages all blended together to create the English that we speak today. Quick vocab break. I want you to understand the differences between colloquial speech and academic speech. Isn't it ironic that the word colloquial is an academic term, but the word itself means informal speech? Get it? Ha! It's both informal and formal at the same time. Okay, so we have colloquial words which tend to be of Germanic origin. They're Anglo-Saxon in origin. But we also have academic words which have evolved from French, and so those have a Latin origin. Now, let's go back to that first clip we watched. We know that English, Spanish, French, Italian, all originated from Latin. So they're considered Romance languages. But German did not evolve from Latin, which is why it sounds different and why it is not considered a Romance language. Now, let's watch another video clip. As you watch, I want you to think about how English words change as they become longer.
Today, we will look at English word frequencies. Remember that words with only more than 100,000 appearances show up here. There's certainly many more 20-letter words that exist.
What did you notice about the differences between longer words and shorter words from this video? I noticed that the longer the word, the more specific its meaning and the more academic it is. I don't know about you, but I tend to associate long words with hard words. But after watching the video on how English evolved, I now know that those academic words, those hard words, use the same roots that eventually evolved into the Romance languages. So if I can recognize and understand the Greek and Latin roots, then I'll be able to figure out what some of those harder words mean by piecing together the meaning of the word. Here's an example. Regicide means to kill a royal person. Now, I didn't have to know the definition to that term if I knew what the two roots already mean. So I know that regi means royal, and I also know that side means to kill. We also see that root side in words like suicide, homicide, regicide. All right, yo, we're gonna wrap up this video with a word wrap. Wrap? Take notes on the differences between prefixes, suffixes, and roots.
Yo, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yes, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. Yes, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yo, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. Let me break this down. We start with root words, the truest. Not a full word, just a linguistic unit. You get a lot of room here to improvise. Visualize words of small size as I summarize. Aqua means water, ami means love, bio means life, hemo means blood, geo means earth, and vita means life. Let's hit the next topic so y'all can get it right. Yo, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yes, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. Yes, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yo, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. You wanna know what's next? It's the prefix step, the initial portion of a term or object. Look at the word itself, it's a two-part patch. Pre means before, and fix is to attach. Anti means against, inter means between, poly means many, while homo means the same. Pseudo means false, trans means across. Prefixes start words, you should never take a loss. Yo, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yes, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. Yes, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yo, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. If prefixes come before, then what's the next chapter? Suffixes follow root words, so they must come after. And while this may sound absurd, a suffix can also change the grammar function of a word. Wait from adjectives to adverb, like clear into clearly. But then child into childish, it's semantics, can you hear me? Ology means study of, ism is belief in, side means killing, or an means demonstration, phobia means fear of, kinesis means movement. And that's what it is, now you're getting some improvement. Yo, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yes, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down. Yes, words of power and that's the truth. Prefixes, suffixes, and they all got roots. Yo, words of power, they run this town. So let's run the track back and break them on down.
All right, so just to review, English is a blend of many different languages. Academic words are generally Latin-based, while colloquial words are generally Anglo-Saxon-based or Germanic. Knowledge of root words can clarify the meaning of hard words. And that's it. Before coming to class tomorrow, please chunk your notes, write a possible test question for each chunk, and summarize your notes in the summary section by answering the essential question and then answering all of the questions in your notes. But only do it in a short, concise paragraph. To learn more about Greek and Latin roots, check out any of these resources, and I will see you tomorrow.